LSU's got a newly minted 5-star signee in its 2025 class. We got the deets. It's Locked on LSU. Let's go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. As always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. The LSU women's basketball team scores a win over number 13 Oklahoma by the hardest. We got the deets on that coming up here in just a second. Brian Kelly has added another support staff member, and it's someone who left and came back. I've got the details on her in just a bit as well. But on Thursday, On3 released their final On 300. If you're not familiar, On3 is a recruiting service that rates the top players in the country, like 24/7 and Rivals and ESPN does. Well, On3, every year, their top prospects, they call their On 300, the top 300 prospects in America. And On3 is different than other scouting services in that On3 only crowns 32 5-stars. And the 32 5-stars are supposed to be representative of 32 first-round draft picks for the NFL. Is effectively why they do 32. So every year it's 32 without exception. Some years, there might be more players worthy of a 5-star ranking, and in some years there might be less, but ultimately it's 32. And for example, if you look at, I'm just looking at 24/7 here. So I'm looking at the final 24/7 rankings, and 24/7 also, incidentally, this year does also have 32 5-stars. So, but On3 every year it's on the number 32. Well, on Thursday, On3 released their final rankings. So remember, the reason this is kind of significant as well is that these final rankings are once players' senior seasons are done. That's why they wait and do these final rankings at this point. Because let's just be honest. You have guys who are ranked when they're being recruited as sophomores and as juniors and then as seniors, and you play your senior year and you see how things play out. And sometimes there are players who physically, you know someone like this. It might have been you. When you were 16 to when you were 18, how physically different were you? We know all have kids in our classes who, when we were younger, were the best athletes, and then because they matured faster, and then everyone caught up. So it happens. Sometimes guys explode early, like Leonard Fournette, whoever when he was in the 8th grade knew he was going to be a freak show, and he ended up being that exact freak show throughout. And sometimes there's guys who have a high star rating early, and it doesn't really manifest. Look, there was a guy, an offensive lineman from Baton Rouge, Cardell Thomas, who was a 5-star early in the process, and as he kind of played throughout his junior and senior year, that star ranking fell. He came to LSU, never got on the field, ended up going to Florida A&M, to FAMU. So that's not to disparage Cardell Thomas. It's just an illustration that this happens. Well, in any event, so senior year plays out. Now On3's here with their final rankings, their final On 300, and the final 5-stars. And Carius Curne, LSU signee from Arkansas, earned his 5th star. So now, as you look at the final On 300 rankings, the highest ranked player in LSU's class is DJ Pickett, who finished number 10 overall, number 10 in the country at any position. Harlem Berry, the number 1 running back in the country from St. Martin Episcopal in New Orleans, of course, had already been minted a 5-star. He finishes number 18 in the country. And then there at number 28 overall is Carius Curne, who earned his 5th star, again, the 28th best player in the country. So LSU finishes with 3 5-stars. If you're looking at the rest of the On 300 and the 5-stars, Alabama has 3. Texas ended up with 4 5-stars. So if you're looking at the SEC schools, as it were, Georgia ended up with 2 5-stars. I'm glancing quickly here. Let's see. Auburn had 1. Tennessee had 1 with Isaiah Campbell. Oklahoma had 1. Michael Fasusi, the offensive lineman. So anyway, point being, only Texas ended up with more 5-stars in this class than did LSU. Oregon ended up with 3, but I'm just looking at SEC schools. So anyway, Carius Curne earns his 5th star. And I want to remind you of what Brian Kelly said about Carius Curne on National Signing Day.
Physically imposing, 6'4", 330 pounds. One of the stronger offensive linemen that I've recruited in some time. He is physically strong at the point of attack. He dominates his opponents. If you just turn on his film, he absolutely dominates his opponent. He is physically ready to play in the SEC right now. We'll have to see how the other things come together, but he is physically ready to play. He's a special player.
Special player who is physically ready to play. And that's oftentimes the thing you don't hear about freshmen at the line of scrimmage when they come into the SEC. It's the physicality that they're not ready for, because you're going to be going up against SEC caliber defensive linemen. You can have guys at receiver who are physically ready to play as freshmen. Cornerback, sometimes that happens as well. Usually on the line of scrimmage, you don't have guys physically ready. They may have great ability and agility and hand placement and technical skills, but the physicality has to come as they grow and develop, mature in their body. There's Brian Kelly telling you Curne is ready to play now. And I think that's significant because he could. I'm not predicting a true freshman to come in and earn a starting job, but I'll remind you, this isn't uncommon. In Brian Kelly's first year, Will Campbell and Emory Jones both ended up starting as true freshmen tackles in the SEC. So not only is it common, is it not uncommon? It's happened here since Brian Kelly's been at LSU. Now, if we roll back the clock to 2022, Emory Jones and Will Campbell were physically your best options. They just had to get the experience. They were already your best options at tackle. When you look at it now, LSU's depth may not allow Curne to get on the field as a freshman, but I wouldn't rule it out. I mean, the biggest question mark that LSU has going into 2025 is the offensive line. And it's odd because going into 2024, that's what we all assumed was going to be the biggest strength of the team, right? Do we all agree on that? Like, we all looked at LSU's offensive line in 2024 and went, Will Campbell, Emory Jones, 2 guys projected to be first-round picks. LSU's not had a first-round draft pick on the offensive line since Alan Faneca in 1998. That's the last time LSU had a first-rounder. LSU has never had 2 first-round picks on the offensive line ever, in any draft ever. So we were looking at this going, man, that, and then you're adding Miles Frazier and Garrett Dellinger, a couple of seniors who are 4-year starters. You're going, yes, oh my God, this is the best offensive line ever. And they were incredible in pass protection this year. LSU's line was. Run blocking was a problem. But still, you're replacing 4 starters with a ton of experience. Now, I love that they went and got Braylon Moore from Virginia Tech, plug-and-play center. I love that they went and got Josh Thompson from Northwestern. That's a guy that has played guard or tackle. I think he's going to play one of your spots on the right side. Maybe LSU goes and gets a transfer portal tackle in the spring window. Maybe they let guys who they have here, like Tyree Adams and Bo Bordelon and Weston Davis, go battle it out for that other starting tackle spot. If nobody plays well enough, then you kick Josh Thompson out and play tackle. Well, either way, I know Braylon Moore and Josh Thompson are going to be starters. You got 2 starters that are locked in. The other 3 spots right now are up for grabs. Could DJ Chester move to his more natural spot and play guard? Yep. Could Paul Mabenga take a step and be a starter? Yep. Could Tyree Adams be the replacement for Will Campbell, the heir apparent at left tackle? Yep. Could any one of those guys not take a big step this offseason and have their job taken away by a guy like Carius Curne, who Brian Kelly said is physically ready to play? Yep. Which is why when you get into spring and then ultimately fall camp, the offensive line is the position everyone's going to watch. We can all be really excited about the receivers who are coming in with Nick Anderson and Barry and Brown. Like, we're excited about the receivers, excited about the tight ends with Trey'Dez Green, and then obviously the two you're bringing in with Donovan Green and with Bauer Sharp. We could be excited about seeing some of those cornerbacks come in. You're bringing in Mansour Delane from Virginia Tech. You're bringing in Jakeem Jackson from Florida. DJ Pickett's a 5. So there's things that are exciting. None is more important, though, than what happens on the offensive line, because this offense has every single ability to be awesome. You have you got the fifth-year senior quarterback. You got the freak show pass catchers. You got depth at running back. You got great tight ends now as well. You got to keep Nussmeier upright. You keep Nussmeier upright, your offense can be awesome. That all goes back to this offensive line being really good. One other thing, Shea Dixon from On 3, the Bengal Tiger, has predicted for months now on our show that Carius Curne would end up getting his 5th star. And he was right. And this was Shea Dixon back in the fall on Carius Curne and the relationship with LSU offensive line coach Brad Davis.
He is the number 1 player in Arkansas. He's also the number 1 interior offensive lineman in the country. I'm on 3. That would give Brad Davis 3 O-line top 100 commits already this cycle. He was committed to Arkansas at one point, visited Baton Rouge in the spring, and a couple of days later backed off that commitment. Now that he's had the official visit, I think things are looking good there. And no shocker, Matt, it feels like every year, because it is, that Brad Davis has been on the staff. He's put together arguably the best position group of anyone on, the coaching staff.
Retaining Brad Davis continues to be one of the smartest things Brian Kelly did when he got the LSU job, and it continues to pay dividends. And congrats now to Carius Curne. Earns his 5th star, so LSU with 3 5-stars here in the class of 2025. Spring practice set to begin a little more than a month from right now, as the Tigers will be getting after it for the first time in previewing of the 2025 season. Now, the LSU staff has continued to evolve, and we found out on Thursday that Brian Kelly's adding another member of his support staff, and it's someone who had already been at LSU once before again. We'll tell you about her next. Locked on LSU, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Attending NFL playoff games, it is an experience like no other. The energy, the excitement, the connection with the fans, it's unmatched. I've been so fortunate to be able to go to so many NFL playoff games, primarily Saints playoff games over the years, from the time I was a young kid up to 2006 and going up to the NFC Championship game in Chicago and being there to watch the Saints' great run through the playoffs in 2009 to the Super Bowl. Unfortunately, I was at the NOLA No Call as well. That is a memory that I would like to forget. But this year, Game Time makes it even easier to create those unforgettable moments with their new feature, Game Time Picks. It filters out the fluff. It shows you only the best deals on great seats so you can focus on what matters, being there. So use Game Time Picks. They curate deals to make it easier to find the best prices on great seats. The super deal is the best value for that event, and you can see the seat views before you buy. You have on-time ticket delivery, the lowest price guarantee. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem with the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Well. Another day has brought another staff addition for Brian Kelly and LSU, and another staff addition with ties to Louisiana. Are you noticing a theme here? If you're an everydayer and you've been here for the past couple of episodes, you've heard me say this, with LSU adding Lance Guidry as a defensive analyst, and then LSU adding Alex Atkins as the tight ends coach and run game coordinator. The thing that I have pretty consistently said here, and then also we talked about Jazz Smith no longer with the program, the director of operations for LSU no longer with the program. I've recited a pretty familiar theme here these past couple of days. If you haven't been here, if you're not an everydayer, you should be. Please go check out those episodes. But the thing that I have illustrated very clearly is that Brian Kelly is making over his entire staff, on field and off, with people who have connections to Louisiana and LSU. The people who have been around here when LSU is winning national championships and they know how to build it. Now, I understand, and by the way, all that to say, on Thursday, we learned that LSU is bringing Kiva Soil Cormier, back to LSU. I'll tell you after 3 years at Baylor. I'll tell you more about her in just a quick second and why this is significant. It's an NIL role and all that stuff. I'll tell you in a second. But understand that when Brian Kelly showed up, it was very important to uproot a lot of what had gone wrong. Remember, there was, when you get if you have a decaying tooth, they have to not only pull the tooth, but they got to go down into the root and clean out all of that infection. Otherwise, it just festers in the gums. Thankfully, I haven't had to have that, but family members have. Anyway, the point is, when Brian Kelly showed up, LSU was a couple of years removed from a national championship, but man, had it gone badly. Not only did you have a couple of sub 500 seasons, but you had the protests where the players marched without Ed Ogeron. You had so much bad around the program. You had Title IX investigations beginning. It was awful. The culture around the program was awful. I mean, on the field was all. I mean, yet Brian Kelly inherited. I mean, he played a bowl game with 38 scholarship players. Man, it was awful. So Kelly came in and had to uproot a lot of the bad and clear out. So he cleared out everything. Man, like Brian Kelly came in and was firing everybody. Not only coaches, but like the people who cleaned the building and answered the phones and people who had been around for decades gone. Why? He had to uproot what he thought was the infection, what was causing that bad culture. And he brought a lot of people with him from Notre Dame. And they went and hired a lot of people independently, and some stayed. And there's still some people around the program now who, who were there before Brian Kelly and were still there, but not many. But what's been interesting is as Brian Kelly allowed his culture to take root, what's been obvious is some of the staff misses, the recruiting misses, the roster building misses and mismanagement. You fixed the culture. You've got great buy-in. What you don't have is the roster and the whole organization built with people who know how to maximize the resources of Louisiana. Say it all the time. The number one advantage of LSU is the dirt. It's Louisiana. You are the only Power 5 in a talent-rich state. By my account, there are 3 programs in college football that have that advantage, where you're the only Power 5 in a talent-rich state. Georgia, tons of talent in Georgia. Georgia's the only Power 5. With respect to Georgia Tech, they're just not fishing in the same pool. And Ohio State, tons of high school talent in the state of Ohio. Ohio State is the only game in town. And then there's Louisiana, and it's LSU. Nick Saban showed it years ago. Put a fence around the state. Get the best kids in Louisiana, stay home, you'll win championships. But to get the best kids in Louisiana to stay home, you got to foster relationships. You got to have a Frank Wilson who can go into New Orleans and get any kid out of New Orleans. You got to have Corey Raymond, who's from New Iberia, who can go into Acadiana and get the best players. You got to have dudes that know Southwest Louisiana, like Lance Guidry, who played at McNeese, who's from Welsh. You got to have dudes that know North Louisiana or respected North Louisiana can go up there and recruit. You got to have guys like Austin Thomas, who have all the inroads in this state, and the people who know what boosters to call when you need something done. It's Louisiana, man. We still abide by the Napoleonic Code. I mean, we have a Tiger Stadium because a governor built a dorm there to get state funds to pay for the football stadium. I'm not saying we should celebrate it. It's just the reality in this state. It's different, y'all, and you know it. You know it, I know it, we all know it. And what Brian Kelly has done now is he has built up his staff on field and his support staff with people that know Louisiana. We went through it on the last episode with the Alex Atkins news. The Alex Atkins news means that all 10 LSU on-field assistants now, all 10 have ties to Louisiana. Everyone that had ties to Brian Kelly that brought him from Notre Dame are gone. Brian Polian's gone. Kerry Cooks is gone. They're all gone. He's brought back Corey Raymond. He's brought back Blake Baker. He's brought Bo Davis here. Alex Atkins had coached for 3 years at Tulane. You bring in an analyst in Lance Guidry, who's as Louisiana as they come, who's also been an interim head coach, a head coach at McNeese, and a DC 7 times. Do you understand the point? Like, Brian Kelly has finally said, okay, to the people in the LSU athletic administration that know what it takes, to Austin Thomas, to Scott Woodward, to Verge Osbury, okay, what do I do? Yeah, you need to hire him. And the latest addition now is Kiva Soil-Cormier. So Kiva Soil-Cormier is a Lafayette native. She's born in Lafayette. And she worked at LSU for 7 years. She was the associate AD for player personnel. I'm sorry, that was at Baylor. The 7 years at LSU, she was the assistant director of recruiting operations at LSU for 7 years. And in 2019, she was part of the 2019 staff that won the championship. Dave Aranda gets hired at Baylor. He hires Kiva Soil, who's now Kiva Soil-Cormier, as his associate AD for player personnel. She also oversaw recruiting operations at Baylor. Well, in the summer of 2024, June of 2024, she was promoted into a newly created role of associate AD for NIL administration and pro relations. And now Brian Kelly is bringing Kiva Soil-Cormier back home, back to Louisiana, back to LSU, effectively to do the same role. Matt Zenitz of 24/7 was the first to report that Kiva Soil-Cormier was coming back, and she is going to fill a similar recruiting role at LSU. Now, an NIL role at LSU. Now, to be very clear, LSU has to make this official, and we've got to hear what that all is going to entail. But we are embarking on a really pivotal time in college athletics where rev share is about to go into place. What does that mean for collectives? How will NIL deals be manufactured or be enacted? All that is very important. You have Austin Thomas right now in the general manager role. And quite honestly, if Austin Thomas said, I want Kiva Soil-Cormier back, and that's the reason this is happening, awesome. Give him whatever he needs to make this thing run. Because he has shown you already from the end of last year to now, when he is enacting what he wants to do, what a roster can look like. How did that happen? You landed a top 10 high school signing class and the number 1 portal class in the country, and you got a roster that we're all excited about. Austin Thomas. Not saying he did all the work. I'm saying that's the architect. That's what a general manager does. And he knows the right people to put in the right place and who to call to get the things done that they need to get done. And that is a massive deal. You're talking about adding staffers to deal with NIL and player personnel and recruiting. You have my attention because there is nothing more important. NIL has, at this point, overtaken the importance of recruiting being relational. Recruiting, Nick Saban said it on the pivot. Recruiting isn't relational anymore. Yes, that can matter to a degree if it's a tiebreaker. But by and large, when you're talking about shelling out money, that's what matters. And then maybe somewhere down the line, it's relational. Or if a player enters the transfer portal later, do they pick you because of the relationship? It could be something like that. But ultimately, you got to have the right people that know how to get stuff done. And not only that, but the right people who know how to get stuff done in Louisiana. And Kiva Soil-Cormier is part of that. I love that they're bringing her back home. Another addition. Say it all the time. Your biggest advantage at LSU is the dirt. Take advantage of it. Brian Kelly is doing it right now, and you should be excited for it. We'll wrap up next. Locked on LSU, your team every day. Okay, let's put a button on this thing. Kim Mulkey and the LSU women's basketball team, they beat Oklahoma 107-100 on Thursday night there at the Maravich Center. The Tigers moved to 22-1, 7-1 in the conference. The Sooners came in 4-3 in the league, but ranked 13th in the country. Speaks to the strength of the LSU of the SEC. But what a night for Michaela Williams, y'all. Michaela Williams scored 37 points in the ball game, and none bigger than the three-pointer that she nailed at the end of the game that started that 6-0 run to finish it after Oklahoma had gotten within a point. If you weren't watching the game, just very quickly, LSU hits it. Michaela Williams hits a three to go up 4. It looks like the ball game is over at that point with about a minute to play. Oklahoma in transition, without hesitation, hits a three. It's a 1-point game again. Tigers back down the floor. Michaela looked like she was about to rush a shot right in front of Kim Mulkey, who told her to pull back and run some clock. They moved the ball around, ultimately got back to Michaela, top of the key, and like an assassin, boom, straight on, drilled the three. Fearless. LSU's back up 4. Oklahoma had to press a little bit. Del Rosario, a little block, forces a turnover, outlet to Flaugier, transition layup. LSU goes up 6 right there, and that was all she wrote. They'd add a free throw to win it 107-100. They got the cover as well. But how about Michaela Williams with 37 points, and then Anissa Morrow, 21 points for the Tigers. Look, LSU, Flaugier had 25, by the way. LSU led by 24 late in the third quarter. They were blowing the doors off of Oklahoma, in large part due to a dominant second quarter. LSU was trailing, by 3 at the end of 1, but LSU outscored Oklahoma by 13 in the second quarter to take a 10-point lead into half, and they extended that lead to 15 by the end of the third quarter, and it had been up to 25 till Oklahoma went on a little bit of a run. But LSU's turnovers in the second half were a problem. OU scored 17 points off of LSU's 11 second-half turnovers that allowed them to cut it down to 1 point with a minute 35 to play. But Kim Mulkey's squad got it done, 107-100. So the Tigers moved to 22-1 on the season, 7-1 in conference play, tied with Texas and Kentucky, but has the tiebreaker over them because of their overall record, and trailing only South Carolina, who's 8-0 in the conference, 20-1 overall. So LSU with the win. Now they'll play Mississippi State on Sunday at the Maravich Center as well. It's a 1:00 tip, and the Tigers continue to truck along, wait for the home game against Tennessee on February the 9th. That's on Super Bowl Sunday, incidentally. They do have a road game at number 5, Texas, coming up here in a few weeks. You've got back-to-back tough road games against ranked opponents, Kentucky and Alabama, so it's not going to be easy coming down the stretch, but LSU has positioned themselves to be one of the top seeds in the NCAA tournament to make sure they get a favorable draw and hopefully another destiny in the Final Four, and possibly another meeting with South Carolina somewhere down the line. We'll see if it'll happen that way. But a really good win for Kim Mulkey and the Tigers over a feisty Oklahoma team that fought and played really well defensively late in that third quarter and into the fourth quarter to come all the way back from down 24. But LSU would hang on and win by 7. Okay, that'll do it for us here on today's episode of Locked on LSU. Hey, do us a solid. If you're listening on podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video, and let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you every single day. For Locked on LSU, your team every day.